Hello and welcome to Who Cave Conversations. Today we've got something a little bit divergent from my normal little content matters, i.e. the character options stuff. But today I wanted to talk about the exhibitions. And currently I'm joined by two very special guests. So right opposite me I have Mr. John Collier. How are you, sir?
I'm good, thank you, Mark.
And
Excited.
then underneath, followed by Alex Storamate. How are you?
Hello. Yeah, good to see you.
So, yeah, good to see you guys. And as I said, we've got a little bit of a history with a couple of projects that have been worked on. But I was surprised it only took me 3 days to get a copy of this wonderful little book. And Blackpool Remembered. So I thought, what a great opportunity to speak to a couple of guys who are involved with it and talk us through the process. So, as I said, I think our viewers will be aware that there was a bit of a history before this book become an eventuality. John and Alex, if you want to just sort of go back to the origins of all of this before we start sort of going through the book that's been brought out.
Shall I go first, Alex?
Yep, I think you can. Yeah, why not?
So it was a result of the lockdown, basically, when everyone had a little bit more spare time on their hands, didn't they? And I'd, at some point, downloaded a book on the internet, which Alex had written, which was about his experience of visiting the original Blackpool exhibition. And I can't quite remember how we contacted you. I must have emailed your website.
You messaged me on Twitter.
Was it on Twitter?
I thought it was Twitter. Good old days.
Those were the days. And just had a conversation. We haven't stopped talking since, have we, really, in the last 5 years, Alex? And the conversation was around, I want to fulfill a lifelong dream, which is to write the history of the Blackpool exhibition that ran from 1974 to 1985. And being a like-minded soul, Alex was well up for it.
I think, yeah, because we'd both been to the exhibition and we'd both sort of ended up with a lifetime obsession with it and a real fond memory. And in my little book, which was called Who, When and Where, or Who, When and Where and When, which I just produced back in 2010-11, it was like just a very, very short collection of memories from conventions and different aspects of fandom, but that included my personal photos from visiting the exhibition in 1985, and that led me on to another project which I wanted to try and recreate a map of the floor plan as it was when I visited, which I initially did from memory and got dramatically wrong, but through looking online,
Nobody's perfect.
Well, yeah, you got to start somewhere. Looking online, I found illustrations on other sites. I think Stuart Glazebrook had done one of them. And I found another one that was scribbled in biro on some school paper by somebody called John. Turned out to be you. And yeah, I think when you first got in touch, you asked about the floor plans and my photos. And then we realised we both tried to do floor plans. And then we sort of got our heads together and thought, okay, we can get this right between us. And like you say, back in lockdown, we just had more time to do research and to do things like this. And we just gradually built up a lot of momentum. It went from, can I use these in my book conversation to let's do some stuff together. And it just sort of grew very fast from there.
Resulting in a 600-page ebook that included contributions from like over 100 people, the original exhibition army. And then we went on to do another ebook after that because we had even more. When the first one was out there, people were like, this is amazing. I've got stuff too. So we then released Blackpool Revisited. So between those two books, over 1,000 words and pages, 1,000 pages around that particular exhibition, which is just crazy.
I think there's some inspiration behind that artwork, Alex. So, and I think that's something that's very common. Like even for me, from someone from Australia, I never got to experience as a young child these exhibitions. The things that that it strikes really fond memories for a lot of people. My experience came much later in life, in 2003, when I visited the Welsh exhibition. And that was, again, grown man walking through, I must say, obviously a much younger young man, but back then, walking through and taking in, walking through a, TARDIS doorway of sorts, and then surrounded by the sounds and the lights and the things that you grew up watching as a child. So, and I was just sitting and reflecting when I got the book, and obviously, Alex, when we'd been conversing and I had my little trip over there and we caught up, and you gave me one of your artworks from the original ebook. And it's almost like we're looking at it from a couple of perspectives. We've got a young kid looking in at that, TARDIS control room, the thing that I would always imagine as a young guy in primary school, just imagining finding a police box, pushing open the doors, and there it is. And then obviously in Blackpool Remembered, the new cover for the book, we've got almost the polar opposite of the view from the TARDIS looking out at that young person looking in. And I find that that's a really striking image, and I think it plays on several emotional levels for a lot of people, would you say?
Yeah, I think I'm really happy with the cover of the new book, more so than the original. Because actually, I spent my childhood drawing Doctor Who stuff. As an artist, I thought I would always be doing that sort of thing, and then didn't. And I think back in 2020, I hadn't done any Doctor Who artwork in 6 or 7 years. So that was the original cover there was my first piece of Who art in a long time. So that was sort of, I remember feeling a bit rusty doing it, but it also unlocked something. And I think what I wanted to achieve in both covers was on different levels was, you've got this sense of awe and wonder that certainly myself and John, we remember experiencing as kids going into this exhibition where, you'd go round this long dark corridor which suddenly opened out into what for all intents and purposes looked like the real console room. It really just was awe-inspiring. So I wanted to capture that sense of childhood and magic that the exhibition brought, and also sort of the scale. I was 7 when I visited, so I was only a little kid. So everything looked larger than life, and also the colours and the ambience. I think that the colours of the exhibition were one of the things that always stayed with you, because it was just quite simple. We're going back over 40 years. They didn't have LEDs and that sort of thing. It was all red, green, blue, and just how to create ambience. But they did it so well, and that's what I wanted to capture in the illustration for the front cover, rather than showing a photograph. I thought, we've all got various skewed memories of how it looked in our minds, and I was trying to, reimagine my own memories there. So when we were working on the new book, I thought, I'm not, because there's issues around using images of Daleks and things on front covers. So I thought, okay, we can't really use the original cover as it is, and just scrubbing out the Dalek wouldn't make any sense. So I thought, let's do a new cover for the new version of the book. But as you said, it's an absolute reversal of that same scene, pretty much.
Yeah.
I think we all, when you have a happy childhood memory, you want to cling on to that and you don't forget it. So any means, especially once you start approaching middle age, I think you look back on those years with a bit more fondness than you did when you were younger. So I think my idea was just to, just try and evoke all those feelings in one image that would be, yes, it's a look back at your childhood. It's a look at the classic exhibition. It symbolizes the sort of the mystery and the brilliance of it. And it also, shows you the heart of the exhibition, because that's what the thing everybody remembers is the console.
And I think, as I said, just as a child, you always, you're watching Doctor Who on television, and over here in Australia, we got Doctor Who upon to UK discuss. We got it on endless repeat over here. Tom Baker, John Pertwee, and then obviously then going into the Peter Davidson years. So That's sort of where my first experience is. Probably, just to sidetrack a little bit, John, what was your first experience of Who? Like, what's your first recollections?
I reckon the beginning of the exhibition, so 1974, and my earliest memory of watching it on TV were around about the same time. So almost like I was 5 then. And I can't remember exactly whether it was the opening year or 1975 when I went to Blackpool. We used to go to Blackpool all the time anyway. We were always in Blackpool as a family. But I obviously knew what this thing was that was in front of me, this oversized police box, and begged my granddad to take me. And we went up to the kiosk and he paid for us both to go in. And I got to the top of the entrance staircase and looked up, and I don't know whether I originally thought it was a giant spider, but now we've done our research, it could have been a pterodactyl. Whichever it was, I seen those episodes of Who, and they petrified me. So instead of going down on that very first occasion, I then darted the opposite direction and ended up on the Golden Mile. Regretted it straight away pretty much, and it must have been later that year or even the year after when I'd plucked up the courage to go down. So the love of Who and the love of the exhibition in my memories are just like that. They're totally intertwined. And of course, the interesting thing with the history of the exhibition was it was opened by John Pertwee and Liz Sladen. And then the following year, Tom took on the role and he visited, with Elizabeth Sladen and Ian Malta. So it was, all of this kind of my growing love of the Tommy era and my love of the exhibition. I wanted to go every year. Just everything just kind of came together, really. And just to go back to Alex's pictures. So not only did he do those brilliant covers, or the original cover, and he's done the recent cover, but he also created artwork for each of the sections, because we knew if we were going to tell this story, it had to have some kind of narrative. And we plucked a couple of things from what was outside the exhibition, which were those phrases above: enter the TARDIS, defy the Daleks. So we knew those would be a couple of good chapter titles. And then we built in a couple of others as well: enter the TARDIS, into the Egris. And so those phrases became a stimulation, I guess, for you, Alex, wasn't it, to think about what would that look like visually. And I'm so pleased that they're in the new book version as well, because the artwork's just gorgeous.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And again, there it is there, the console room, or a section of the console room. And as I said, I think we've all agreed that as a young person going into seeing that and taking those memories from television, and I think that's the big thing. I think as we get older, we have that urge or that need for nostalgia, to harken us back, and especially like I'm surrounded by my own mini museum here in my Who cave, because I find comfort in it. It takes me back to a happy time, and I enjoyed watching that. Who's been around for 61 going on to 62 years, but everyone's got their own era that they fall in love with. And obviously I'm of a certain age. I was born in 1974. So for me, it was that very late 70s when I have those recollections of watching the old black and white television at home before mum and dad got the colour TV. And then eventually that black and white TV ended up in my room, and I was able to sit down and play with my toys and watch Doctor Who in black and white in the spare room. So, and then to be able to see these things in the flesh. And as I said, for me, it became a much later in life, but still to walk through those and to look at those iconic things, even though they're static standing there, it just draws that memory back all of a sudden. And I think that's what's been a big success for the ebooks initially, and then obviously moving on to the decision to take those two ebooks and then put them into one little package.
Yeah, I think all along the way when we put all these ebooks out, people have always said, will there be a physical version? And we'd always said no. Maybe because of, everybody that we'd been in touch had supplied their photos and content on the basis that we were making a free ebook. And obviously with a digital publication, there's no limit on the size it could be, which is why the first one ended up being over 400 pages or so, which you can't, unless you're quite a established and wealthy publisher, you can't feasibly make a book of that size. But then I think, it was when I was working on my Evolution of the Toy Dalek book last year, because I also did the layout and design of that. I was enjoying the process that much. As I was finishing that book, I thought, I want to carry on. What can we do? Then I thought, hang on, this year now, is going to be 40 years since the Blackpool exhibition closed.
Yeah.
And I think in the past few years, your print on demand self-publishing has developed and is you can do more things than you could a few years previously. So I thought, why can't we do a version of Blackpool Remembered to commemorate, 40 years since it closed? So really taking the best bits out of that first ebook to build an illustrated history of the Blackpool exhibition, mostly focusing on the year-by-year floor plans and all that sort of thing. So a really more abridged and concise, because the original book, it goes off at so many tangents as well, which was great. But you think, okay, if we were limited in the amount that we can produce, then we just need to look at really the core elements that need to be in a book on the history of it. So it's not just a book version of the original ebook. It is a different book. It's a brand new design. And although it's similar, it's got a lot of the same features in this, some of which have been rewritten and edited and that sort of thing. But personally, I think it's almost better because it's got a more defined focus on that history aspect, whereas the original book was more about a collection of memories, hence the title. So there was a much more personal and nostalgic aspect to a lot of those stories, some of which were very, very touching. And we didn't want to devalue the original book either. So we thought the best thing to do is to keep most of those for the ebook and for a printed book, which is obviously not just going to hardcore Who fandom, but anybody with an interest in Blackpool history or TV and props and that sort of thing. So it would have a much wider audience, being for sale on Amazon. So I think we thought, it would be good to just focus down on the history of the exhibition. Maybe there's an old tangent that we go off here and there, but I think that was really, really the thinking, is just the challenge, if you like, was, okay, we've got all this amazing content, but a small box. How much of it can we fit in there and still make it work as well? So
I think there was a common thread in terms of, we'd got that timeline, we'd got the floor plans, but the Richard Lever's photographs then provided something that just ran through and gave us consistency in terms of the quality of those. Remembering they were taken back, in the 1970s. I think, were they originally slide, Alex? You know more about this, don't you? In terms
because when I looked at what we'd got, I think when we were working on the original book, we'd had lots of great photographs from fans of varying quality coming in, and then one late night, I got the most excited email in the known universe from John saying, "You're not going to believe this." And it was a download of several hundred photographs taken by Richard Lever, who was a fan who was born in Blackpool, so that was his local town. He visited the museum, the exhibition, almost every year, I think, or every year.
I was going to say, it was flipping through the book and the ebooks when they came out. There's some really nice images, and it's quite consistent. Like you said, I think the exhibition was 74 to 85. And there's a lot of coverage over that time with Richard's fantastic photos.
Yeah, and the thing is, he didn't use flash, so all his photographs capture the the atmosphere and the lighting exactly as it was. And the quality of his slide scans were just so good. It made it look like they were taken yesterday. It felt like time travel when we got them. So when we started working on this new book, I thought, okay, let's primarily focus on Richard's photographs because they were quite simply the best that we'd had with his permission. And that would, like John said, it brings a visual consistency throughout. And, they're photographs that are just so evocative. You want to make the most of them.
Yeah. Well,
and Richard was happy to be on board and have his photographs finally put to use in the right kind of publication.
Is this one of Richard's photographs? Yeah. And just looking at that, like just to see the mummies, Sutek, and and is that the Marconi scope down there as well?
Yep.
Just to see that, as I said, as a kid, wandering around the dark corridors, the lights, the soundtrack, it just invokes that, and again, taking those photos without flash is the best way to capture some of these images.
Because you can just see on that shot there where there's sort of half glass protects the props. Now, as Alex has said, a lot of people just, cheap cameras back in the 70s, certainly the shots I've got a dozen that you just can't tell what's going on, because the flash has gone off and it's distorted the whole thing. So with a lot of the pictures we did get from people, as Alex has said, the quality did vary. But with Richard's, oh my goodness, I remember opening the download, unzipping the file, and like I said, there were hundreds, but you just had to pore over each one because it just felt like you were taken back there straight away. Very similar, I've got to say, Mark, to your pictures of Wales. Quality, and you think about the difference, 20 years or something, maybe even more.
Yeah, 2003 my photos were. And again, I used a similar principle. I had back then it would have been a Kodak 3.2 megapixel digital camera. They were fairly new, but you had the option with or without flash. I also had a mini DV camcorder, so I was able to video. And for me, the Wales exhibition was fantastic because there was nobody there. So I basically had the entire place to myself, and I got to run through that place a couple of times. And again, it's about getting those atmospheric shots. Like photography for me is a bit of a hobby. It's really about capturing the essence of that moment, because I've said the problem with some of those old cameras, especially the ones with the little box flashes on them, where you take the photo and they flip around to the next, and all of a sudden you just get this bright white photo with a vague outline of, was what was there. So yeah, I get you guys would have been like a kid in a candy store when those photographs came through from Richard.
We were, yeah.
Yeah, and
also every time I look through them, I spot one I haven't seen before.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that there's probably a few photos that didn't make either the original ebook or this book.
There's hundreds.
Hundreds, yeah. Not just pictures. I mean, since the new books come out, people have been sharing photographs on social media. There was a guy who shared a picture from 1974 of himself as a maybe 5-6-year-old outside the police box, and the exhibition isn't even open or finished because the signs are on the pavement. They've not been put up yet. So all this stuff just keeps being sent to us and shared with us. And you just think, okay, how many versions of this story are we going to be able to tell? Because, putting the bits of the jigsaw together, we thought we'd done a pretty good job back in 2020. But even now, 5 years on, as word has spread about the project, we're getting, we're still getting new stuff. I'm excited about it.
And John, I think that's what it is too. Like, the more this project has got exposure, the more nostalgia that it grows. And obviously through the network of obviously running the print on demand with the latest book via Amazon, you've almost encapsulated a complete new audience. Like, as I said with Alex, going back a while when we did the original Evolution of the Toy Dalek book, that ebook, it was a conversation I sort of had with Alex on the fly where I said, it'd be so nice just to have some of those. It's just nice to sit and flip through something that's not overcomplicated to read. It tells a little bit of a story. It's a visual story as well as the information that we can all go back. And I think we all like to go back, and because previously with the exhibition books and the things like Daleks, the Dalek book and so forth, there's never really been anything specific. And as you guys would attest, growing up, we all bought those, those books, 25 Glorious Years, or you've got all the other, books by David Howe and Mr. Walker. And there's a lot of those that talk about exhibitions, but there's only ever like a couple of pages. Doctor Who magazine, they might do a page or something,
I think for a long time it almost felt forgotten about, because I remember in David Howe's 1980s book there was one tiny little photograph of the exhibition from the outside, and I remember, and John probably did the same, it's like you get the magnifying glass on it and look at it for ages and you think, wow, okay, I didn't imagine it did exist, but is this the only photo that is around there? And now we've since, it's been like a gold mine, and it still is. You think, well, we've uncovered so much amazing stuff, so all these brilliant photographs and memories. Yeah, and there's still more out there.
And I think, as I said, the more that this project has developed, and as I said, with the print on demand, I think, you guys have hit within a week 100 copies, or at least 100 copies straight up off the bat without even trying too hard. And I was one of those immediate orders. As soon as I saw it on Amazon AU, I was like, bang, got to have it. So again, because I didn't get to experience that, but I've experienced exhibitions and I've read about them. And it's just all to me about nostalgia and going back and envisioning that.
I don't know. It runs deeper than nostalgia for us, doesn't it? I think because it's a significant. I mean, obviously, John went many times, whereas I only went in the 1 year.
Yeah, but significant part of your life.
I referenced it in the book as the sort of the highlight of my childhood, which it was. As a Doctor Who obsessed 7-year-old. To suddenly be able to sort of literally step into the series right there in front of you. Yeah. It was just the most amazing thing. And I think the actual exhibition became a bit of a mystery for us, because we were trying to think of what was where, how the angles of the corridor went, where little obscure details were. And, we spent an afternoon talking about the pavement one day. Really sort of slaving over the most geekiest of details, just because we wanted to build as much of a clear picture as possible of what this place was and what it meant to us and every fan that visited it. I've never heard or read anybody saying that's crap.
Yeah. No. There was a day where we were very close to releasing the first ebook, and we got an email, I think was it from Bill Cook, who'd got an original copy of the 1979 floor plan. And again, it was just, we would often get these, what we call treasures. And as soon as me and Alex saw it, well, first of all, Alex was in heaven, because he was like, oh, now I get it. That's the angle of that particular piece. And it was just amazing. But the detail within that floor plan itself, where it's talking about, it's minor changes to the fabrication of the place, new carpet here, strip lighting there. This display is going to go there. This is from season whatever it was at the time, and it gave us another boost, but it also gave us a dilemma, because it's like, oh, we thought we'd almost got all the pages done now, we've got to put another section in, which we did. But yeah, that was a moment.
That was incredible. Yeah, and we actually had two different floor plans from 2 different years. We had the 79 one, and I think the one from 83, which was more of a lighting plan.
Yeah.
So the two plans definitely confirmed the layout of the exhibition, which I was able to then, as you're showing, I was able to create a new illustration that was accurate. But yeah, the little details that they included, like bits of walls or additions to the lighting and that sort of thing, it's really fascinating. And you think, well, these probably existed for every year, and we've only seen 2 of them.
Yeah.
But again, it was research and getting those treasures that really allowed us to make the floor plans, which I think are still one of the real highlights of the book, because that's your sort of moment back in time where you can retrace your footsteps in the year you went.
Yeah.
I'm just sort of flicking through it now, and it's really good how you go by year, and then obviously you've got your floor plan layout, and it's really simply laid out. You can follow the bouncing ball, so to speak, with the numbering system and what was where, and then to see that progress, and then obviously followed by some really awesome images and information about each year as it goes along. And then obviously, as John, you've pointed out, the Alex's illustrations that sort of go into each of those little chapters, so to speak, of starting with the police box entrance and then moving through the book. And the other thing I noticed too was, as looking at it, is the nice forward from Steve Camden as well. Yeah, and as I said, he's one of those people in the world of who I'm so jealous of, how he got his start. It's quite interesting. As I said, when we caught up, Alex, back in late 2023 on my UK trip, we discussed, and obviously I got a couple of his books courtesy of yourself, and I made that cold call to Steve. Thought, oh well, I'm here, why not? And yeah, he was really good, and it's amazing. Like, we had some very similarities in life, the both of us, when we started talking about. I used to work in electronics. He was, following that path and pestering the people at the store and getting involved with, the repair of K9. Which kid wouldn't want to, go and work at the BBC and play remote control K9 and be responsible for the assistant operator? And
yeah, Steve's story is incredible because he was. I mean, if you've seen the recent real-time Mythmakers DVD, it's just a fantastic story. He was so, the luckiest 16-year-old on the planet at the time, just to be in the right place at the right time to get that little. Even though it was only something like 18 months working on the show, but yeah, absolutely incredible. I first met Steve at a convention in Coventry in 2002. And we got talking, and we've kept talking ever since. We're still in touch now. So to have him write the foreword for the book was a no-brainer, really, because he obviously went to the exhibitions a lot. He'd got his own photos from there and similar memories to us. So couldn't think of anybody more perfect to write the foreword for it.
The other thing I was looking at is that I'm interested is Julie Jones's perspective. Fill us in a little bit how you got Julie involved, and and just share a few of her insights, maybe.
I think Alex contacted her on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook, and I was given her email address. I think that's how we made the initial contact.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't familiar with her name. I think you found her name in something, maybe the research you were doing from the production book from J&T, maybe.
That's right. There's a picture of her with John Nathan Turner, and it just describes her role a little bit. So that's why we contacted her.
Yeah, she was the exhibition ended up as the exhibition manager. So I think I just did a random Facebook search and found a Julie Jones that I thought that looks like it could be the right person.
There was a picture. Wasn't there a picture of her with the Cyberman?
Yes, I thought there can't be many Julie Joneses with a Cyberman.
That'll be it. That'll do it.
She just get back to me and was absolutely lovely and really keen to help. So passed the details on to John, and that felt like such a gem because she was so generous with her time, and her piece is a really fascinating insight into what she did to actually get the place what it was, and the challenges behind it. It was not glamorous at all by the sound of it.
No, it sounded like a logistical nightmare. Like, just obviously she was obviously as the years progressed and the seasons progressed, with, I guess they were looking at, how can they shake up the exhibition? What's the current theme? And from what I've sort of skimmed through and had a look, there'd be, discussions, if it was smaller level props, she would collect them. If it was the larger stuff, BBC removals would, coordinate with whatever was on the latest season. Once those items have been utilised, then they'd get shipped across and mapped out for the exhibition. And then obviously,
spent time on the studio floor looking at what she wanted to include in both Blackpool and Longley. And Bob Richardson, who also did an interview for the book, who also worked alongside her and Lorne Martin, he talks about Julie's shopping list, didn't he, Alex? And she would have this wish list. I want that. I want that. And so picking it literally from it being filmed on set, the pieces that she wanted to put on display, that was like sort of beginning of the next season's progress, really, which was fascinating. But we did hear back from Lorne Martin, who was pivotal in setting up those exhibitions in the first place. And we're proud to say that, again, he's been a big support with all of the books that we've created. But just to hear it from BBC staff, that the inside story almost, isn't it? And photographs that Julie allowed us to use. That was another just magical moment, getting the right people on board, as well as the hundreds of fans, but actually the people who work there. And since we've had messages from, we had one this week, didn't we, Alex? My granddad worked at the exhibition, and there's another little thread that you want to follow and go, tell us more about that. Because I did get quite friendly with the staff going so many times. Lots of people remember Alison Cross, who worked behind a little shop. We've still not tracked Alison down. We've got pictures of her in the book. But other members of staff, who would be really friendly every time that I went, and on occasions would let me in the back way through the Bonny Street exit, go down the stairs. I just wanted to go to check in the shop. And then I'd spend another hour in there, going back around the exhibition. But yeah, they were just lovely people. And again, that helps with the memories for me, because it wasn't just a lovely experience when you went there, but they were lovely people who worked there as well. So that was important, I think.
I think, which probably leads me on to my next thing. Everyone loves a shop, don't they? There's always a shop at the end.
What a shop, so, 1980, was it 1980? Well, it says 3 underneath. Yeah, so that would have been from Blackpool. That's one of the many little purchases.
Do you guys want to share some experience? Obviously, I never went through there, but John and Alex, maybe just regale us with some memories or what you remember seeing there in the shop.
Well, anyway, it was the cream on top, wasn't it, really? You'd been through the exhibition. It all ended with that console room, which was so exciting. And then through the doorway to the exit. But actually, that little shop was just there for you to spend another hour looking at what was in. Because at those days, you've got to remember that getting memorabilia from Doctor Who and buying toys and there wasn't really that much around in terms of, like, Woolworths didn't stock that stuff, it was around about the time when some sci-fi specialist shops were just starting. I know here in Stoke, there were a couple of sci-fi shops in the late 70s that started to stock Doctor Who toys, paperbacks, Target novels, whatever it might be. But the shop in Blackpool had everything and more, and specific exhibition items as well. So you could pick up a pen or a pencil or a car sticker or a t-shirt or a badge, and it would, and it was stamped with Exhibition Blackpool on there. And so it was, for me, favorite bit. I can't remember how many postcards I bought over the years. Certainly jigsaws. They got all the toys, the Dennis Fisher toys, they were in there. Just caps, baseball caps like that one, Mark. And so, the shop was kind of a place you just wanted to visit anyway, whether it was part of the exhibition or not. It was just because it was stocked with goodies.
Yeah, because like you say, there was so much, what limited amount of Doctor Who merchandise there was back then wasn't available in the general shops. You might have people like John Fitton who was doing mail order and that sort of thing, but to actually, as a 7-year-old in 1985 I just wanted Doctor Who stuff, to suddenly walk into this shop, it was like, oh my God, look at all this stuff. And there wasn't even any toys by that point. It was all books and postcards and stuff. But, I bought some fine art castings, Daleks and a TARDIS. And I think we bought the sound effects LP.
The old favourite.
Postcards. And I got a Dalek pencil case for my best mate. But I think out of everything I remember buying in the shop was this cassette tape called Space Invaded, which was all the BBC space themes. So you'd got Blake Seven and Doctor Who and Tomorrow's World and K9 and Company and all these, Sky at Night and Cosmos, all the classic space and science fiction program theme tunes on this cassette, including the Leisure Hive music, which is the piece of music I always associate with the exhibition. Because I remember getting back to the caravan after we'd been to the exhibition for the first time, putting this tape on. It felt like you brought a bit of the exhibition back with you. So all of a sudden, this music, and still to this very day, for me is inseparable from Blackpool. I hear the start notes of the Leisure Hive suite, and I'm back there. It's just that amazing connection between memory and music. That really cemented it for me.
It's funny you mention that, Alex, because through my my visit to Wales and putting out that video that I did, I did a video a long time ago, which copped a lot of views and good feedback. But then what I did is when I was in the UK, I just thought, you know what, I'm all the way here. I'm going to go back, revisit the town as it is now, because obviously the site was demolished and buildings were put in place, but the signs still were there. And I thought, well, this is something a little bit new. I actually managed to find some software to upgrade all my footage to very HD quality, and the same as the images, which we've utilised for another project to discuss later. I was able to, go back and put that all together, and it was just amazing the response you get from that. So I've walking around town, filming all the old signs, and then obviously seeing the images of the exhibition and stuff. And again, there was a shop there as well, but by the time I got there, unfortunately, the shop was pretty bare because they lost the license for the Dapol figures in the Doctor Who range. Obviously, it was getting very close to the time of the new series. So obviously behind closed doors, as we probably all know now, that's why that had stopped, because it was planning for a new series, so new merchandise. But still the experience of having the shop. And obviously in my little bit of a collection here, I've got a couple of little pieces. So obviously these are something that would have been around at the time. But yes, I've never worn them. But I think they're probably a little bit small for me now. But and little things like the Peter Davison little money book, quite simple. And I believe I saw in some of the images, like we've got some of the jigsaw sets that were running around back then. Like I've got those as well.
That was an interesting set, that Peter Davison. There were 4 of those.
Correct.
Had a picture of Peter shooting a Dalek, and he'd never
met that one.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm looking at it now. I think it's the shots from Destiny of the Daleks.
Yeah.
With Peter Davidson.
He's been superimposed in the background from another episode. Right. Yeah.
Yes, and then there's another one of Anthony Ainley in the TARDIS.
Right. That's right.
Another superimposed shot.
Yeah.
But so you get to wander around, you get to see all those childhood memories, and then you get to your shop and you get to buy all those fun little bits and pieces on the way out. But so I think all in all, guys, I think it's a fantastic publication. So for everyone out there who wants to know about it, it's obviously available from Amazon, and it's available in most territories, I think, through Amazon. Alex, is that right?
Yeah, I think it's available in all territories that offer full colour print on demand, which is most, to be fair, I think.
Yeah, and I honestly thought that I was going to have to order mine from Amazon.co.uk, but then when you said it's gone live, and I jumped straight onto Amazon Australia, and there it was. 3 days I had it. It was great.
You got your copy before either of us.
I still haven't got one. I've still got my proof copy in the background.
Yeah, well, I was desperately hanging out to see it. As I said, I'm a big thing for tactile objects, and I think that was the thing. The ebooks were fantastic and still are, and it's great that you can run that expanse. You've got 400 odd pages of stuff. So this is a condensed, tidied up, polished little item of a great little coffee table book that goes through those years, and the floor plans follow us with great photos and great artistry. But
I think for us it's reached its ultimate form. Again, this version has a slight bias towards the exhibition's final year, because we thought, putting it out this year, it's to commemorate 40 years since it sadly closed with little fanfare. There were several fans that hadn't even realised it, went back the following year just to find it gone. Or even worse, they went back and it was a Laurel and Hardy museum,
And I think when we look at those sort of things like exhibitions, they're sort of not as few and far between now, but we've obviously all got a mutual friend, Neil Cole, who unfortunately wasn't able to join us today. But Neil and I converse a fair bit, and I made the trek, and Alex, you and I said I'm going on a road trip to see Neil Cole. By chance, you happened to have a little bit of time free, so we continued my road trip together and got to spend a good bit of time with Neil and look at. And again, Neil is a love letter to the exhibitions of old. I think it's amazing what that guy can do in a small space. Underneath his home, he's got this wonderful little museum, and Neil's gone from strength to strength, from a very basic sort of setup. I think it was Netflix where he had his first exposure, and then to the effort he went to get that, and then the local issues he had with the Dalek outside, and he's had a long journey to get where he is today, and he's got some representation almost from every Doctor.
He's got something like over 300 items from the classic series, or something daft like that. He's just got an obscene amount of stuff.
And you know what? It's reminiscent of walking around little corridors, bit of sound in the background, the coloured lights. It's exactly what I remember when I was going through, the Wales exhibition.
And I think he's deliberately channeled that inspiration. That's what he wanted to achieve with it. And what he's managed to do in such a small space is just mind-blowing, because obviously it's not just Doctor Who either. That's 75% of the place, but you've got Star Wars and Star Trek and Aliens and so many other franchises, all the Marvel stuff, and it's just it is incredible. It is like an Aladdin's cave, and then you go through the police box stores and you're in Doctor Who exhibition. So I think the nice thing for me and a lot of other fans is you go through there and you see stuff that you saw as a child back in the 80s or whatever. He's got stuff that was at Blackpool, which is obviously why we were keen to feature his museum in the new book, because it's almost like a Where Are They Now? There are several things like the Garm from Terminus, and
well, that was at the Dapol.
Wardren's Cloak from
there as well.
Dead, the Pteroleptils from The Visitation, the Black Sideman from Attack of the... So many things that were at Blackpool, one of the Cryons, that are now in his museum for everybody to enjoy, rather than shut away in a private collection, not to be ever seen in public again. And his preservation and restoration skills are absolutely astounding. So he's really presenting everything in its best light as well.
And speaking of private collections, obviously there's a lot of us fans out there that obviously like, and look, a lot of my stuff is replicas. Obviously I've got my Silver Nemesis guy standing behind me. I've got the Cyber Gun, got my Sea Devil Zygon, but if I scooch across this way, I have a tunic from the Sunmakers, which is
nice. That's a great story.
And I'm more than happy to sort of share what I have so people can see it. It's not tucked away, never to be seen again. And obviously it's out of shot now, but I've got a set of original Cyberman gloves from the Invasion. That ended up in Neil's book that he did for the Second Doctor era. So
and I think what's great about what he does there is, like you say, he is preserving stuff and he's restoring stuff. So it's just so well presented.
I'm watching some of the stuff he does now, and and obviously, some of the, well, there's a more recent one that he was working on with the Scarrison. That the amount of level of detail that guy, he's just amazing. He's very,
and everything that he's got is screen used or production. He's got very few replicas, and when he has got a replica, such as his canine, for example, then it's clearly labelled. So you know that almost everything you're looking at there is the genuine thing.
I guess in terms of projects, then obviously there was the moving forward. There was the Longleat ebook, another great place I would have loved to have gone to. Obviously, the famous location for the big anniversary. That they underestimated the popularity of the program.
Oh, totally. I mean, certainly me nor John, we didn't ever go to Longleat, did we? But looking at all the fans' photos that was supplied to us for that project, and it was almost like visiting because it was so much stuff to see and discover, and fantastic photographs, stuff I'd never seen before. Props on display that I'd never even known that had been displayed before, such as the remains of the exploded Dalek from the Five Doctors and stuff like that, and the blue and silver Two Swords Dalek on display as well, which is the only time outside of the Two Swords exhibition I think that had been on public show before it got repainted for Resurrection. So yeah, it was by all accounts a smaller exhibition than Blackpool, and you didn't have to go down any stairs to get to it. It was all on ground level. Same idea, same atmosphere, obviously the same team behind it.
Yeah.
I think when I sort of fell out of love with Who in sometime in the early 90s after it had finished on TV, and I didn't get back into it until I think 99. And that was when I first started going to conventions and traveling around for exhibitions. And I finally started looking into going to Longleat. I thought, okay. And then I found out it had closed that year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never made it. I mean, it was nice at the 20th celebration that they literally trucked down the M6, the big illumination figures. So you've got Peter Davison and a Dalek or two, and also some of the other monsters that were there. Because they, as much as the exhibition was a draw, once Doctor Who became part of the Blackpool Illuminations for a number of years, that tableau for me was another place to go and visit and be photographed by.
Imagine that trundling down the M1. Yeah,
you see on the back, Peter's just lying horizontal. But there's a bit of a naughty story which we told in the original ebook about my mum giving me a bit of a piggyback behind the actual illumination tableau. So the TARDIS doors would obviously open and close when the lights were on at night. So in the daytime when we visited, the TARDIS doors were open. So you couldn't see the console, you couldn't see Peter Davison. But my mum spotted, if you go around the back, there's a bit of a gap. So get on my shoulders, and I took, again, a little photograph, pretty blurry, of Peter Davison's figure inside the illumination console. But those figures were down in Longleat, as were a number of props. I think the beginning of 83, March, Easter time 83, when that was going on, Blackpool was a little bit barren in terms of what was on display there, because a lot had been taken down to Longleat. It came back later on, but if you went,
but I think because they set up they had a special effects tent, and they had, I think they reset up the TARDIS control room. So they really went to town on it. It's just so sad that so many people unfortunately had to be turned away, but a lot of people got some really good memories out of it.
And the amount of stars who were there as well. I mean, you look at the amount of doctors that were there and companions. Incredible, really.
Yes. Leading on to projects and things is something that we've all been involved in, which is not out yet, but maybe if we can have a little bit of discussion what our, the viewers can expect to see coming at some point in the future. Obviously, we all have lives and we've got, commitments and things, and it is a love project. And I must say it's one that actually got us all communicating, involved in the first place, which for me was just I become a little bit reminiscent of some of the old images. I was going through an old camera and I found my raw mini DV footage and also found all my still frame images. So I thought I was on the Dapol Facebook page, and that's when I just I asked first. I had a couple of images and said, "Look, is anyone interested?" And all of a sudden said, "Yeah, put some images on." And then I found all these images and plastered them on, and obviously it's caught Alex's eye, and it was like, would you consider, or would you like to, help contribute? Which obviously is the next project that'll come out in due course. John, do you want to maybe take us through a little bit about what we can expect to see potentially?
Yeah, so similar to, I guess, the thread we've talked about with Richard Lever's photographs, your photographs provide a really nice visual history of Llangollen. I say Llangollen, Alex says it much better than me.
Llangollen.
There you go. So the book title would be Lost in Llangollen, and it would, for me, Llangollen was a place where, after Blackpool had closed, similarly to Alex, I kind of lost a little bit of love for Doctor Who, but then came back to it and realised, oh wow, there's another exhibition, and it's not that far away from where I live, about the same distance as Blackpool was, and so I started visiting there, and it was a pretty good follow-up exhibition, to be honest, in terms of the layout. I think David Boyle had, he knew the Blackpool exhibition, the original one. And so the structure to it, the sort of atmosphere within it, what he'd got in there, lots of things again from Blackpool. So I loved it. I just love going there. I think I probably had a better stock shop than you had, Mark, in the days when I went. But so it makes sense, really. We've done Blackpool. We talked a little bit about David Boyle's second Doctor Who exhibition in Blackpool Revisited. So we've done those two. We've done Longleat, certainly the celebration event at Longleat. So in the timeline of exhibitions, I guess it makes sense to do this one next. And Alex did say to me the day that the book was released, I don't know what to do with myself. I feel like working on another book. He's smiling because he knows it's true.
And I must say, that was the spark that got me going. And then obviously got me, I said I happily provided those photos. And then it was a case of Alex had this idea for a cover that we've all sort of discussed. And that's when I went, you know what, I've got a lot of Dapol product. And I started photographing not just the exhibition, but I went through all the figures. And then I was like, I think I can do this. And so I sort of put my basic building skills together and constructed, let's just say, something to present for a potential front cover that I had a lot of fun working on, and then obviously photographing all of the figures that I had, which I've got a lot of them, and the different variations of the Daleks, and obviously then that bled into the next obviously project once I'd submitted all of that, and then it sort of went from there. So, and it was nice to recount my memories. Again, similar to you guys having Blackpool, for me, that was my memory because I got to go there once, but I was in the town for a few days. So I did a couple of visits and I knew the original Bessie was tucked away downstairs, and obviously Magnety, David Boyle's replica, was out the front or utilised for events and weddings and so forth. So, and it's the joke I've had with Mark from 42 to Doomsday. I think he thought, oh yes, I got to sit in Bessie, but sorry, mate, that was Magnety. But it was great. My little story was, that I was in there again. Unfortunately, John, the shop was almost bare. I think I got one of their last figures made, which was the Cyberman, the static figure.
Yeah.
But other than that, there wasn't much on the shelves. But I went and spoke to the girl who worked in the shop and just said, look, I'm aware the actual Bessie is downstairs. Is there any chance I can get to see it before I fly home to Australia tomorrow? And the girl was very obliged. She said, come back and see me on my lunch break. I'll take you down. So she was good. We went down. She let me pose a few photos with it and got to sit in Bessie. So, childhood dream achieved.
See, as a fan of the Dapol figures, especially growing up, when they finally came out in '87 and '88, it was like all my dreams and Christmases come at once. It was like, this is absolutely brilliant. So always had a soft spot for those figures, and I would have loved to have gone to the exhibition and had the factory tour as well, which I thought was a brilliant combination.
Yeah. What would be your ideal exhibition if we were to see anything like this, like those come back again?
Well, I went 3 days ago back to the site. I bribed my way into standing on the exit staircase and took a picture down those stairs and had a lovely little chat to the staff at the shoe cellar, which is the shoe shop that's above where the basement is. They use downstairs for storage now. There I am outside the original doors. There you go. And just reflecting on it and having some conversations on social media again, we've been saying, wouldn't it be great if, you're never going to get all those props back, but actually to have that space as an exhibition of the exhibition, I mean, that would be incredible. I know, Mark, you've been playing around with AI with some of your videos and stuff, and Richard Lee has been playing around with AI. I mean, potentially, if you had, if you won the lottery, you could do something very special in terms of showcasing what did go on there and bring back even more memories for people. Although I've got to say, that it is looking a little bit tatty inside now. Those back staircases, it's crumbling away, bless it. But yeah, I mean, that's an exhibition of the exhibition. That's what I mean.
And you know what? I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think that would be awesome. I know there's a lot of, they had the 60 years of Doctor Who art where they had private collectors who, got there. So it's achievable. I know it's a bit of a logistical nightmare, and I know I think there's currently an exhibition where there's a lot of props and costumes that have been assembled together. But it would be so nice to see a bit of a homage to the past, and for a limited time or for a short run for 3 months or whatever, if they could get the right venue to replicate something very similar like Blackpool again for a limited time, just to show the people the experience.
I think one of the things that everybody that we've spoken to when we talked about the exhibitions is how all the official BBC exhibitions in recent years, certainly since the show came back, have lacked the atmosphere that Longleat and Blackpool had. Where everything was painted black. You were going into space literally, and lit in such a way, especially considering the state of a lot of the original costumes were probably not that great after they'd been used on screen. So a lot ambient lighting hid a lot of tattiness and stuff like that. But it also made stuff look so much better than it looked on screen. Whereas when we've seen even the more recent Worlds of Wonder exhibition, which had some amazing stuff on show, but it was just lit in bright, normal indoor lighting, and it had no atmosphere. Even though it was nice to get up close to things like the Omega costume from Arkham Infinity and stuff like that, it was just not. You really felt like, you were looking at relics and items here. It was very much museum feeling as opposed to an experience. And I think the overall, no or very little in the way of sounds or music or ambient stuff playing in the background. Everything's presented very, very starkly, which I think it takes it away from the show a little bit, whereas what the old exhibitions achieved was it made you feel like you were stepping into the show. And that has always been lacking, I think. And if someone was to do a new version that was paying tribute to Blackpool, I think, like Neil's done with his museum, it's all about the lighting and the atmosphere. It's not just about the stuff on display, it's the overall experience.
I think Neil's exhibition is probably the closest replication of that idea and that theme, which is what I think really rings well with a lot of people. even again in my own little atmosphere here, I replicate. I don't have big bright lights on everywhere. I actually have cabinets are all lit up in different coloured lights. They fade in and out. I've got all the other main lights turned off. So when people walk in here, and funnily enough, I even have the old soundtrack for the Welsh exhibition, which came to me through someone through one of the Facebook groups saw all my stuff, and they reached out to me and said, I've got the original soundtrack for the museum. And I said, oh my God, do you? And so I can recreate that atmosphere in here all over again. And with your help, Alex, we were able to recreate a couple of signs reminiscent of Dalek signs around town. So I've got a couple of those up in here as well. So, but again, it's all fun. It's all nostalgia. It's all that love of stuff that we've enjoyed. So, guys, I've really enjoyed the conversation today. I think it's fantastic, and I think everyone needs to do themselves a favour and get out and buy this book. As I said, it's quite easily available. Get onto Amazon, place your orders, and you'll get them, like me, within about 3 days. So, readily available. And the great thing about this option is that postage costs from all over the world, we don't have those. Unfortunately, there's a lot of territories where you order stuff from, you have the postage issue. With this, you're ordering direct. I've got, three main providers in this book. You've all done a great job. Those images are fantastic. It's all been collated really well. So
thanks. No, I think it is a labour of love, and that I hope that shows. And it is a sort of a culmination of the past 5 years of working with John on our mutual obsession with the place. And it's also really putting out a book that's we haven't had a visual book on the exhibitions before in print, so that's really filling a little gap in the marketplace there. Yeah. But I think it's, if you're a fan of classic Doctor Who in particular, then whether or not you went to the exhibitions or not, I think this is a book you would want to read, because it's just packed full of stuff that we learned stuff as we were making it. There's fascinating behind the scenes pictures, whether it's the exhibition Dalek being repaired or Julie Jones in the BDC storeroom with the Supreme Dalek. There's some great pictures, and it's really a side of the series that I think if you're a fan of it, you just want to dive in and just really immerse yourself in. This book, I think, is the closest thing to time travel that we could achieve.
Correct. It is correct. No, I'm really happy with it. I think it's a fantastic book. John, any final thoughts before we sign off for the day?
I'm conscious there's someone we've not mentioned, actually. Got a little bit upset now, because one of the people who was always an ambassador for the place, and he was a volunteer there, was Stuart Glazebrook. And we know that Stuart did incredible artwork, a lot of it around the exhibition. And when I reached out to him in 2000 and asked him if we could use some of that for the first ebook, he was so generous. He sent the original artwork through the post. It came to my house in a big brown seal envelope, and I got to see it firsthand. And then I had the pressure of making sure it was going to get back to him safely. But just to see it and be able to scan it and use it and share it, he was a real. He was a friend of the book. I never met him face to face. We had many phone calls during the creation of the book, and it was really sad when he passed away. We did create a Stuart Glazebrook sort of celebratory special, which is also available as a free download. So on the final page, we've just put a little in memory of, and the book is dedicated to Stuart, because he was, he was integral in terms of trying to do what we did, which at the time was the archive, the history of it, really.
He was a volunteer there, as you said, and he had the privilege of wearing a lot of the classic costumes, like the Thought robots or the Exelon or the Cybermen. So if you visited the exhibition in the 70s or maybe the early 80s, and you'd met somebody in costume, it was likely to be Stuart. And his photographs, he took some brilliant pictures, which again, in the early days of the internet, when I was doing research 10, 15 years ago, his photos were some of the only ones online.
Yeah.
And it's been a pleasure to include some of those in this book as well. Had permission to use some of his pictures, and we've also included some of his brilliant artwork as well.
Yeah. And I'll put some links into the ebooks as well, because I think that's a very important part of the building blocks for this project that's out now. And again, with some more stuff to come. But as I said, I'll insert the links in there so everyone can go and check out the originating titles. But again, yeah, thank you guys for joining me today. I just wanted to be able to share the story about how this all came about, and obviously try and get it, people to buy some more books for the coffee table. Once again, thank you guys. And as I said, Alex, you and I have chatted about doing a couple other little bits and pieces down the track. And obviously, John, once we get to the next little project, and as you guys know, I'm always happy to help.
You look forward to the Mark, have you got this ... emails.
Yeah. Get the shopping list ready, boys.
Yeah.
Okay, that's enough time for today, guys. So thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you all again very soon. Thanks for joining us today.
Cheers.
Cheers. Take care.
Bye, everyone.